While you're at it, maybe like, share, and subscribe so others can see.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, have you seen our common sense conservative leader's brilliant 15-minute documentary on the housing hell in Canada that's been viewed over 4 million times?
I am certainly familiar with the conservative scheme on housing. I haven't watched the video
Okay,
itself.
so I would strongly encourage that you do
there
watch
is-
it because it's a common sense conservative plan how to build more homes and not more bureaucracy. And while you're at it, maybe like, share, and subscribe so others can see a common sense conservative plan on how to get housing fixed as well.
I'm happy to comment on the conservative scheme today. In fact,
your
very
government's
happy
housing
to.
agency, CMHC, says that 3.5 million additional homes need to be built in Canada by 2030 to restore housing affordability. Your housing agency, the same one, the head of that agency says that, it said 2 days ago at the Senate Finance Committee that your government has no plan to reach that number. In fact, in this committee, that same agency, your housing agency, says that that target is not attainable under current conditions because of high interest rates and because of higher costs that were caused by your government. In other words, your own housing agency has no faith in you or your government. If your own housing agency has no faith in you, why should Canadians?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Hallen. You asked me to comment on the conservative scheme.
I didn't ask you to comment on that. I made a
You,
comment.
in fact, invited me to, so let me comment.
I'd like to hear an
First of all,
answer
I
about-
would point out...
Point of order.
Point of order.
Mr. Hallan, as he does every time the minister comes, asks a question or makes a statement and then refuses to allow the minister to answer. And so, Mr. Chair, I would just ask
I did
that
not ask about-
we allow the minister to answer the questions out of respect
thank
for
you.
the minister and the other
My
members of this
question was
committee,
not
but
about the
also the folks at home
documentary.
who are watching who would like to hear the answers.
The question is
Thank you,
about
MP
your
Baker.
department not having
MP
faith
Hallen,
in you.
MP Hallen, I am going to ask, like it did happen in the last meeting, a lot of crosstalk, you jumping in when you ask a question.
The question was not about the documentary.
Out of
The question was about
you
her
asked a
department
question
not having faith
out
in
of
her.
respect and out of respect to everybody that's here.
Minister, can you please
MP Hallen,
answer
MP Hallen.
why Canadians
The
should
minister-
have faith in you,
MP Hallen.
even though your housing
MP
agency
Hallen.
doesn't? That's the question.
MP Hallen.
I've asked my question.
MP Hallen. You asked a question. Allow the witness to answer the question.
She's not
the
answering
witness
the
The
question.
witness did not even have a nanosecond to answer your question.
Point of
So-
order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
Not only is that irrelevant and untrue, and they're not answering the question, you shut me down by adjourning the meeting improperly. So could you please let conservatives speak? I know you don't want to hear it as a liberal. I know you don't want to hear about the housing hell, and you
MP
should watch the video too. I might add.
MP Lawrence,
Chair, I will ask my question again. Let's move on. I will ask my question again. It's my time, Chair. I will ask the question
In fact,
again.
actually,
Minister,
let me
your
just
housing
say,
agency has no faith
I believe
in
that
your
MP
plan.
Hallen
Why
asked me
should
a question.
Canadians?
I certainly believe the point of this exercise is for him to ask me a question. He offered quite a long
Questions on the table
preamble
3
with
times
lots
now.
of points embedded in it.
Why should
and I'd
Canadians
like to
have faith in
respond
you
to
when your
those.
own agency
if
doesn't?
MP
you,
Hallen
MP
would like
Hallen.
to
That's the
hear a
question.
response.
Allow the witness, please, to answer the questions.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that Conservative senators have been reprimanded for bullying witnesses, and it would be terrible to have that kind of behavior.
Your Prime
here in the
Minister
House.
has been reprimanded for bullying strong women in his own caucus for standing up to his corruption.
So let
please spare
me
us
let
the-
me
the
now
lecture.
speak about housing, and let me first point out that there is an internal contradiction in what the Conservative members of this committee have done when it comes to voting and their purported
irrelevant to
scheme
my
on
question.
housing. Actually,
Point
I
of
believe
order,
that your
Mr. Chair.
votes are very
Point of
relevant.
order.
There has to be,
Question
you
was
have
clear.
to stop interrupting.
Yeah.
Stop interrupting.
Point.
So I'll move on.
point
I'll
of
move
order.
on.
No, I
I'll
haven't
let you move-
finished
I'll
answering.
move on. It's my time, and I only
No,
have limited
I'm afraid
time.
actually it's time for questions and answers,
Minister,
MP Hallen, so I would like
Minister,
to answer.
This is
Because
the
I have
reason
things
why,
to say
and
about
this is
housing
exactly
because
the
we have a
reason
plan.
why your non-answer proves why Canadians and your own housing agency has no faith in your government to
Point of order.
meet the target.
Point of order.
What this
Point of order.
proves is that the Conservatives do
It's
not
not a
want to
point
actually
of
listen
order.
to the
Point
answers.
of order.
Not
the
a point
point
of
of order is, excuse me, Excuse me.
Point of order. I'll listen
Excuse
to-
me. I have listened to you interrupt the minister and not allow her to
Debate.
speak.
That's
I
not a
have the
point of
right
order, Mr.
to make
Chair.
a
That's
point
not
of
a
order.
point
Now
of
I'm being
order.
interrupted and heckled during my point of order. Please, Chair, please, I'm asking you. Minister Freeland has the right to respond to
This
the
is not a
questions that
point
are
of order,
put
Mr.
to,
Chair.
and this is not. This is
Do
a
your
point
job.
of. Now I'm being heckled and interrupted.
It's not a
during
point
my
of order.
point of
This
order.
is a breach of process.
This is.
Thank you,
it-
MP. Yeah, okay.
It's not a
The
point of
witnesses
order.
have.
Here's, okay.
I will move on.
MP
I can't,
Lawrence and MP
Chair.
Howland.
This has descended so badly now that I'm being
Yes.
interrupted during my point of order.
Yes. Okay, members, first off, stop the crosstalk, okay? Stop the crosstalk.
I'll
And the
move on.
other thing is, MP Howland, MP Lawrence, any MP, is we have interpreters here, There's a lot of screaming going on. If, members screaming into the mics, I think in my opening remarks, I explained the danger, the health and safety to our interpreters. So I would ask, that is with crosstalk, that is with screaming, that is with not having respect and decorum here in this room. I think that is what we want.
Point of order.
Yeah, we are looking
Point
for
of order.
respect and decorum. Point of
Please
order,
don't
MP Lawrence.
crosstalk. And I raised my voice at a reasonable tone, and you did not recognize it last meeting. So that's why I have to raise my voice, because I'm hoping you'll hear me, Chair.
I can hear you, MP Lawrence.
Chair,
I can MP
Chair, with respect, I'd like to move on to my next question. So we can agree that Canadians and your own housing agency don't have faith in your government, which they've already outlined. And that's why after your government spent $89 billion on photo-op funds for housing promises that have not been actualized, rents, mortgages, the amount of down payment needed on a house has all doubled in just 8 years. This was never there before your government, and it certainly won't be there afterwards. Canadians are living in a housing hell and a cost of living crisis. 2 million Canadians are going into a food bank in a single month just in 8 years. There's a 100% increase in food bank usage. A third of those kids are kids that are starving because of high taxes like the carbon tax and other factors that have been caused by your government. The number one reason for food bank usage is because of the housing unaffordability that your government has created. 10 cities across this country, there are nurses living in their cars, there are students living under bridges. That's 8 years after your government. Why should anyone believe that anything that your government has done is actually helping addressing the affordability crisis?
Thank you for the question. Let me just start by saying Canadians know the Conservatives cannot be trusted when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable people in Canada. Since we formed government, 2.3 million Canadians have been lifted out of poverty.
2 million
And
are
our
going to a
government
food
has
bank
particularly...
in a single month.
I'm sorry, Mr. Howland. I'm speaking about poverty in Canada, which you purport to care about and which you purport to have addressed in your question, and I'd like to finish my answer, please.
It was about food banks.
The Canada Child Benefit has had a huge impact on Canadian families and is having an impact today, lifting millions and millions out of poverty, and the statistics show that. Our early learning and childcare program
Minister,
is
the
helping
question was
Canadians.
clear. I'll have to
You
move on
asked
because I have a limited amount
No,
of
I'm
time.
sorry.
Because
I'm sorry. You
those-
haven't given me a chance to answer, and that
With all
is
of
not
that,
only rude,
2 million
it's
Canadians are
inappropriate
still
at
going into
committee.
food bank. I'll just ask my last question because my time is limited. Your government promised by Thanksgiving that the price of food would go down. A scathing report came out this morning on the food index saying that food costs are going up, driven up also by your carbon tax because you're taxing farmers and those that are shipping the food and storing the food. Those people going into a food bank are increasing because of food costs and housing costs caused by your government. 83% actually that are going to food banks are working families. That's a phenomenon that we've never seen in this country before. So you promised on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving went by, food prices didn't come down. We thought maybe you meant the U.S. Thanksgiving. That went by as well. Nothing happened. It's almost Christmas time, and there's literally kids in this country asking Santa not for gifts, but just for food that they could put on their table. On what date will food prices actually come down so Canadians can afford to eat? And when will you axe the tax so people can put food on their table and heat their homes?
So let me just be clear. I've been repeatedly interrupted, and what we see is that Conservatives are interested in posturing. They're not interested in asking actual questions. But let me be clear. Canadians know that Conservatives only believe in cuts, 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 particularly for the most vulnerable among us. And that is why our government is so committed to supporting the most vulnerable, to supporting children. 2.3 million Canadians lifted
What's the
out of
date?
poverty. The Canada Child Benefit, money directly for the most vulnerable children in our country. And when it comes to housing, the purported subject of this meeting, let me just be clear that the Conservative purported scheme actually would go backwards on housing. It would actually
time
put
up?
the GST
Chair,
back
time's up,
on
isn't it?
the construction of
5
rental
minutes is-
housing
6
that we
minutes is
need.
up.
This is not a scheme. This is putting Canada into reverse, when actually what we need to do is build more homes faster.
Quick point of order.
Well, I know Conservatives for a long time. I know because I've supported these calls, have wanted to see the minister come here not on a government bill, but as part of one of our studies. What I didn't realize was that Mr. Halan wanted her here to perform a monologue in front of her and not to actually have a conversation. I wonder perhaps,
Point of
Not
order.
a point of order.
perhaps the committee.
This is not a point of
Perhaps
order.
the committee
Mr. Chair.
could invest in some gold stickers or something to assuage Mr. Halan's ego so
Thank-
that
Hey,
next time
this
we
is
have-
not a
next
point of
time we can
order.
have a
Come
proper
on now.
conversation.
This is not a point
Thank
of
you,
order.
MP Blakey. We just
Trying to be constructive, guys.
But yeah, we are trying to have. We
Point-
do have the minister.
Point
we
of
do have
order.
the minister
Point of order.
here.
I'm calling a point of order.
Point
You
of
have
order.
to recognize
yes,
me.
yeah, of course, MP Allen.
It is any member's right to do whatever they would like with their time. And just because, Liberals and the NDP or the minister doesn't like what I do with my time, it's still my time.
Yeah.
So I would hope that you would appreciate that.
It
We
is.
can ask what we want.
It is your
And
time.
if we're not having
MP
an
Howland,
answer given,
it is
we
your
should
time.
have the right to move on.
Yeah, it is your time. We just ask that all members do, use their time, this valuable time that we have with the minister, in a respectful way, and we have decorum here at our committee.
Christmas, Minister. Welcome back. Mr. Forbes, congratulations on your new role.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Chambers. And I do want to say,
Thank
I
you.
thought Mr. Lawrence was going to ask me a question,
Thank-
and I was going to take the opportunity
thank you,
to say
Minister.
Merry Christmas to his son, James, who's
Thank
here
you.
with us.
Thank you
So
very
Merry
much.
Christmas, James. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Minister.
Minister, 250,000 Canadians have opened a first home savings account, as I understand. Can you provide to the committee how many deposits have been made to those accounts?
Let me start with a correction. It's actually 300,000 Canadians who have
we get the
opened first home savings accounts, and so that's a really good positive number. What that says is there are 300,000 Canadians, by definition, principally young Canadians, because it has to be for
It's
your
great.
first
Can
home,
we get the number
who
of
have
deposits?
are actually saying, I want to buy my home and I'm saving money for it.
Can we get
That's really positive.
Can we get the amount of deposits to those accounts, Minister?
Well, let me just start by ensuring that we're all clear that it's 300,000, not 250,000. That's a material difference.
So you'll commit to providing the committee with the deposits?
I am always happy to update Canadians on the first
Thank
home
you.
savings account,
Okay.
which our government put in place, which
you,
was
Minister.
opened in April, and makes a real
Thank you,
difference for
Minister.
Canadians and shows young Canadians, 300,000 of them, believe in saving for their first home.
Thank you very much. The mortgage charter. Uninsured mortgage holders don't have to go through the stress test. Insured mortgage, why are we not giving the same relief? Why is your government not giving the same relief to insured mortgage holders? Why do they still have to go through the stress test on a renewal? There's 1.2 million, at least 1.2 million households that are insured mortgage holders.
Again, Mr. Chambers, and I don't mean this in an argumentative way, but you have it the wrong way around. It's insured mortgage holders who don't need to. It's insured mortgage holders who don't need to requalify.
I apologize.
That's an important distinction.
It is a very important distinction, and I apologize for mixing that up. Why do uninsured mortgage holders have to go through the stress test? There's at least 1.2 million uninsured mortgage holders.
So it is important not to confuse the two because there's a very big distinction. Insured mortgages, by definition, are insured. And so that means that but I'm underscoring this because the initial question was wrong. And when you talk to OSFI and the regulators who are responsible for determining the sanctity of our financial system, they make a very clear distinction between insured and uninsured mortgages, and that's the reason for the different treatment.
Thank you very much. But by definition, uninsured mortgage holders are less likely to default because they've provided at least 20% down or more. So why are you forcing them to go through the stress test?
Again, let's be clear on the responsibilities that our superintendent of financial institutions has for guaranteeing the sanctity of the Canadian banking system. And as Canadians, we should be really proud that we have a safe and stable banking system. I have a lot of respect for our institutions, and I always will.
Thank you, Minister.
Insured mortgages, by definition, have an
Thank you,
insurance
Minister.
policy that backstops them.
Thank you,
that
Minister.
creates a
Obviously not
very
gonna
different impact on our financial
I
system.
appreciate your response.
Thank you.
The Canada Growth Fund is supposed to be an independent arm's length fund. Was it appropriate that a Minister of the Crown, that you appeared at the first investment of the Canada Growth Fund when PSP Investments is supposed to manage this fund on an arm's length basis?
So I'm, of course, very familiar with the structure of the Canada Growth Fund because our government created it. And it was our government's decision to structure it as we did because we know that the professionals at PSP know how to make investments. And
Do you show up to CPPIB investment announcements?
The CPPIB is very differently structured from the Canada Growth Fund.
Well, they're both arm's length.
Well, the CPPIB also has a provincial role. So the CPP and the Canada PIB and the Canada Growth Fund are entirely different in their structure. The Canada Growth Fund was created by our government. It was our idea to structure it as we did. I believe that it is very important right now, at a time when there is a race in the world for
Thank you,
investments
Minister. I appreciate
No,
I
you
appreciate
didn't give
the
me a
question.
chance to
So
finish,
the
actually.
Canada Infrastructure Bank.
That is the time. So,
A brief point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
As generally, it's my understanding that we should get time in respect to the amount of seats we have in the House, especially when it is administers, as I've raised this point of order before. It should be Conservatives getting 5 minutes or at least 6 minutes because we have considerable more seats, with all due respect to my colleagues from the NDP and the Bloc Québécois.
So MP Lawrence, I'll speak to that, and I think listen. So I will speak to that, and it has been the practice for 2 years at this committee that when we do not have enough time to do a full round, that we, in a very cordial way and amongst parties, are able to then share that time. That is what we are running up.